セッション2のプレゼンター、まずトップバッターはブリティッシュライブラリーのお二人で、大塚さんとクリスさん2名ですね。メタデータに関して発表していただきます。それではよろしくお願いします。
Good afternoon. So this it's a story, really. This presentation is the story of how we put two printed catalogues, the ones you can see on the screen, online and enriched them. They're actually two very different catalogues, but I'll talk about that a bit later. Making the British Library's collection of antiquarian Japanese books and manuscripts more accessible has been a long-term challenge. One option might have been to recatalogue from scratch, but that would have been time-consuming and labor-intensive. We ended up using old technology to a great extent in the beginning, to such an extent when we thought about making an application to this, we saw new trends and thought, oh dear. But then we realized that we had used some new technology. So we'll flag that up as it comes up. But the building blocks were Excel and IAMS. Now, IAMS is actually an archive system. It's the one that we have within the library. It's the Integrated Archives and Manuscript System. But you can find similar systems, things like CALM or AdLib are very similar. And the joy of those systems is that they give you huge freedom to catalogue as you want to. They are not prescriptive. They don't care about full stops, for example. Yes,
Yes. So we move to the next one.
we do.
Okay, now we go to the journey, how we did it. So Chris is going to point it out some screen. Okay, we start. The Toppan provided OCR data in XML. We first heard about Toppan printing in Japan at EAJRS in Oslo. So Excel was used as a lingua franca between Toppan, BL, and Niger. So, okay. First one, a picture of the data when it arrived from Toppan. There was issued from the printed catalog, such as see below, and another copy at ... Second, can you move the cursor? No, okay.
It's not very easy to see.
Mike?
It's very direction.
Okay. Can you hear? The second is the picture of the data as it was manipulated in Excel. We had to understand the data and how Mr. Gardner, a British library curator, had originally worked with them 30 years ago. The work is so thorough. It is actually tuition on how to build a bibliography. So much cross-checking was done on Excel. Most of the work was done during the pandemic, and so we did not have access to the original, but that is not too bad. It was another way of working and surprisingly enjoyable. It wasn't about how to operate the system or playing with data. Chris.
Thank you. So the third slide on this side, this third picture, is the bulk ingest into IAMS, which is the in-house system. Oh, sorry, no, it isn't. That's coming next. That is what the users end up with. So that is Explore Archives and Manuscripts, which is the outward-facing British Library system. So now let's have a closer look at the first catalogue that we digitized. So probably one of the important, because it's beautifully split up. That's good news for a database. But, well, perhaps an exception to that is that description system there at the top, because within it, there are actually several sections, and so that was actually quite a challenge. So it contained 637 works, but absolutely beautifully done. And so this really was a model for the electronic catalogue, and because we were using IAMS, we could be free and really use it as a model. We are now in the situation that we have successfully imported all the records from this catalogue. So in that sense, it's done, and you can go to the British Library homepage and go into the archive system, archives of manuscripts, and those records come up. And this is where there is some whiz bang, some new technology, because we discovered that Toppan Printing in Tokyo, they had the latest OCR technology, which was accurate enough to process complex metadata in English and Japanese. So I think until Toppan met us, they had a lot of experience with Japanese, or I think also with English, but a mixture of the two languages, that was rather new. Moreover, they could handle data in either direction, so either horizontal, left to right, or vertical, top down, Japanese data. And using the approach involved a considerable financial outlay. This was not cheap. However, once we did the sums, we realized that it was cheaper than employing additional staff. We had to be very specific with them. I think this is probably very typical of such a project, you know, really tell them exactly what we wanted. And specific challenges were things like the English had a serif font. So it's one of those fancy fonts where there are little trills at the bottom and top and that sort of thing. So that was a bit of an issue. We gave up on italics. So there was text in italics, but we had to sacrifice that. We followed Mr. Gardner, well, many things, but certainly as regards usage of diacritics. Conclusion, we had a very positive experience of working with Toppan.
As Chris mentioned about the challenge of Toppan, and this is something especially difficult part for them. So the most difficult part is we wanted to have their data in the structured way, not the simply OCR, the text itself. So this section, as you can see, this is a section about the description from the Gardner catalog, it's a snapshot. Here, it is not always obvious what the headings are. It looks like one section, but actually it is several. At the top, there is a clear heading, description. Then the first subsection starts at block print. The second subsection starts at hiragana majiri. Then the last subsection starts at original black covers. Toppan said the starts and ends of the subsections were not clear as it was a printed catalog. They cross-checked with the human eye and made sure that the starts and ends were correct. They said it was a challenging. The hiragana majiri section is especially difficult. The size of font of English and Japanese were different. AI has improved in the last 3 years, so it is probably easier to overcome difficulties in 2013 for Toppan. Okay.
So once the work in Excel had happened, and we pulled the data into IAMS, this is actually what we ended up with. And Well, it's really a beautifully simple system. Most of the record is just on one tab of a database window. And I think also looking in IAMS, you have a much clearer concept of record. I always feel if you're cataloging in Excel, it's very difficult to imagine the record because you sort of want a picture of it and you just don't have it in Excel. I should explain these red dots on some of the fields. Those ones are mandatory. So you miss the data out in those fields and IAMS gets cross with you. And we never say anything bad about IAMS. Anyway, as regards, once you've got your records into a system like this or AdLib or Calm, it's really easy to make small edits. So if you see something small you don't like, fix it, and you've got the buttons at the bottom: save draft, save, send for review, approve, and that's it, done. You can actually have somebody else doing the approving if you want to. We didn't. Then after IAMS, we kick it into explore. No, we don't. We kick it into explore archives and manuscript. This is a typical record, and it is really detailed, and that's not even the whole record. So this is actually half of the record. It's really beautiful stuff. So at this stage, we did have a comment from Japan saying, well, it's beautiful English, but what about us? How do we read it? And we thought, oh dear. But then we discovered deepowl.com, and this is the other bit of whiz bang, because DeepOwl, as you can see, makes a surprisingly good translation into Japanese. So have a slow look at this, all of you who can read Japanese. You can probably find some strange things, but anyway, it gives you the basic idea of what's going on, and you can then realize, oh, it's got the kanji wrong or something like that. So then there is a memorandum of understanding between the British Library and the National Institute of Japanese Literature. This is it being signed, and there is, according to that, there is a three-phase digitization project going on. Nigel helped with Wakachigaki. So the Romanization needed some splitting up, disaggregation. And there are 19 pages of rules to do that on the Library of Congress website, as I'm sure a lot of us already know. So we tried to follow those. And basically, Nigel and I worked together to optimize the Romanization.
And this is the same bibliographic data we saw at the British Library site, as it happens on the Union Catalogue database of Japanese text hosted by Nigel. It's a Union Catalogue of antiquarian materials. It has authority control for authors and unified titles. The British Library content has been adopted to fit their database template. So again, DeepL is useful for convert from Zenkaku to Hankaku for the eye-friendly. Next.
That works extremely well, as you can see.
DeepL also works for the Niger's data to convert from Union Niger's data, the Zenkaku English to Japanese. And I compare the contrast the Japanese translation from our side and their side. It's not too different, so you don't need to worry too much about it. Now we move to the Kawase catalog. Okay. By contrast, 大英図書館像和漢総目録 by 川瀬一馬 and 岡崎久志, we call it the 川瀬 catalogue, has very brief Japanese entries for 3,500 items, all using the traditional form of the character kyujitai. First of all, 川瀬 catalogue is in vertical. So top band is OCRing, and the vertical Japanese was converted to horizontal structured data. We started to analyze the data. The import of Kawase records has just started, and the first 60 records are on Explore archives and manuscripts.
So obviously, we've just given you a summary of the technical side of this, how we did it, how we worked together. But I mean, there is a legal side to it, and that is something we took very seriously, and we had to make sure that what we were doing was actually legal. Anything in our system, or say IAMS, for example, or anything done by British Library staff during their daily work, then this is CC0. But the printed Kawase catalogue could conceivably have had some copyright issues. One of the authors is still alive, and he is aware of this. And over the years, various combinations of British Library staff, so Ken Gardner, as in Gardner Catalogue, Hamish Todd, Yasuyo Ohtsuka, and me, we worked together off and on over a period of 30 years, I mean, particularly taking into account Mr. Gardner's contribution. There we are. So this is a slide on the theoretical side of all of this work. So what did we do? What did we need to do to create the records? So the answer was using common tools like Microsoft Excel and then standards such as EAJRS. That's actually an archive standard. We also use various ISO standards, one for languages, one for scripts, and authority standards for authority control. And we used our IAMS, but we could have used AdLib, or we could have used Calm or any other simple system. Then to manage the data, we pulled them into a SQL database. Those are absolutely standard these days. And then to discover the data, we used a SQL export, just to export stuff from the SQL database into comma-separated values. We used extensible spreadsheet language, XSLT, to export to the encoded archival description. So that's a way of getting a summary record out of an archive system. We also used it for IIIF, and we also used it for Dublin Core, which is a very simple language used by discovery systems like Ex Libris Primo, which is the one we use at the British Library. And obviously it appeared in Explore Archives and Manuscripts, that's the public catalogue, and also in the Universal Viewer, which is the IIIF compliant image display we used. And as regards external data aggregation, so the reuse of the metadata, the example on this slide is Archives Hub, but a better example would have been National Institute of Japanese Literature, because obviously they shared the data. And we end with a picture of Mr. Gardner, to whom we owe a large debt of gratitude. We have been able to make available a major resource scholars could otherwise have missed. Thank you very much.
あれ、予定ではあと5分ぐらい時間があったんですが、あと10分余ってんで、10分質問したい人、手挙げてください。あ、そこにマイクを。
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just had one simple question about the XSLT scripts you mentioned working with. Are these open source? Can I, for example, reuse them or use them?
XSLTs tend to be very specific, and they're very, very complicated pieces of coding. I mean, some of them probably yes, others no. If it's something for an in-house system, then probably we've had an in-house developer working away. So that would be a mixture. But you probably would be able to find something to go from SQL to EAD, for example. That sort of area might work, but sort of more specific systems might be more fiddly. They usually require a bit of tinkering with, to put it mildly.
Yes, thank you.
じゃあ、
Thank you very much for that presentation. First, a little bit of reminiscence. I knew Ken Gardner very well, and when I was working on the Cambridge University Library Catalogue, it was at the same time as he was working and had been working for many years on the British Library Catalogue. And he told me when it was published that he was really worried that it wouldn't attract much attention, that there would be no book reviews. I arranged for a review of it because normally journals don't publish reviews of catalogues, but he was concerned that it wouldn't reach the public. So I'm sure somewhere he is watching you with great gratitude, because he will know that this is now reaching, his work is reaching a much larger audience and is being adapted to the age in which we all live now. So first of all, please rest assured that he will be delighted about this. The question though is, his book actually covers printed books, and so does Kawase's. What about the manuscripts?
じゃあ、日本語の方もいらっしゃるし、小月先生、日本語わかるので。はい。マニュースクリプト、いわゆる写本に関しましては、すでに、後ろに座っております、ヘイミッシュ・トットが、地道に少しずつ、アイアムで、インハウスで、入力しておりました。で、ミスター・ガードナーのカタログには写本は含まれておりません。ですが、為替カタログには含まれております。なので、まず、為替カタログに取り掛かる前に、まず最初にしたのは、マニュースクリプトのシェルフマークというのがフォーマットが決まってますので、そこのデータだけ先に抜き出しまして、ヘイミッシュが手動で、手入力で、まずこのインハウスシステムに一生懸命入力しております。はい。なので、今回のこういったOCR テクニックであるこのバルクカタローギングシステムには、写本そのものは含まれておりません。
Thank you for your presentation. It seems like the software that you used were actually very effective in terms of getting everything automated. How much of actual manual intervention you had to do in order to actually clean up the data?
English or Japanese? そうですね。一番難しかったところというのは、よく言われるんですけれども、OCR でストラクチャーデータ、いわゆる Excel という形で決まったコラムのところに決まった情報が入るような感じでデータが手元に来たんであれば、インハウスシステム用の Excel に転写するのは簡単でしょというふうによく言われるんですが、実はそうではありません。というのは、 ガードナー氏が組み立てた書士情報の作り方というのはガードナー氏の作り方であって、EAJRS、私たちのインハウスシステムのフォーマットではないからです。なので、それぞれのデータのところのスタディをですね、アナリシスを私とヘイミッシュの2人でしまして、これに関してはここに入れよう、これに関してはここに入れよう、これに関してはこことここを分けてこうしなければという相当なアナリシスが必要だったんです。で、そこに時間はかかったんですけれども、私たちにとってもとても有効な件だったのは、確かにこのガードナーカタログと私たちは申しておりますが、いわゆる書士解題ですので、大変な情報量があります。1ページ1ページをめくって読むということは、私この職について20数年経つんですけど、一度もしたことがございません。カタログというのはファインディングエイドなので、パーッとめくって、あ、これというふうに見るだけだったんですけれども、今回こういった形でデータマニピュレーションするときに、全体を俯瞰することができたので、いわゆる私はガードナー氏には会ったことないんですけれども、なんかまるで個人チューターのように、ガードナー氏がここにこういう情報を入れたのはこういうことなんだから分かるよねというようなことをこう何かまるでなんかテレパシーのように受けたような気がしまして、あるいは一方でこれがいわゆるサクセッションプランというのでしょうか。なんというかこう図書館というのは過去から今へ、今から未来へということで、お目にかかることのできなかった前日本部長の方からこう教えを今受けることができたというような感覚がありまして、それが大変な喜びでした。
じゃあ質問は、後で個人的にしていただくとして、とりあえず、発表ありがとうございました。大塚さんとディロンさんでした。